So friends, are you ready for a Donald Trump indictment? I know I am. How close are we? Let's talk about that, because justice matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So friends, I want to talk today about a new piece that just ran in the New York Times that counsels America to brace itself for a Trump indictment. The piece was authored by two former federal prosecutors, E. Danya Perry and Amy Lee Copeland, and one former special counsel to the House Judiciary Committee, Norman Eisen. And the article begins by quoting a line from the report that was recently issued by the special grand jury in Georgia. Quote, "We find by unanimous vote that no widespread fraud took place in the Georgia 2020 presidential election that could result in overturning that election." Close quote. With those words, the Fulton County special grand jury's report, part of which was released Thursday, repudiated Donald Trump's assault on our democracy. We need to prepare for a first in our 246-year history as a nation, the possible criminal prosecution of a former president. If Mr. Trump is charged, it will be difficult and at times even perilous for American democracy, but it's necessary to deter him and others from future attempted coups. Fani Willis, the Fulton County District Attorney, may present the case as a simple and streamlined one or in a more sweeping fashion. Success is more likely assured in the simpler approach, but the fact that the redacted report has 8 sections suggests a broader approach is conceivable. In either event, we must all prepare ourselves for what could be years of drama, with the pretrial, trial, and appeal likely dominating the coming election season. So friends, I want to follow up on 2 assertions by the authors. First, that success is more likely if DA Fani Willis goes with a simpler approach. Maybe. But let me tell you what my experience was in my 30 years as a federal prosecutor when it came to prosecuting cases or having to decide whether to prosecute cases using a more complex, more involved approach, like in a RICO case, Racketeer influence and corrupt organizations, a big conspiracy case against a whole bunch of people, against an enterprise or an organization, versus the simpler approach, the streamlined approach, what I always referred to as the standalone case. So, first of all, when you are prosecuting a standalone case, what do I mean by a standalone case? One crime or one marquee crime. For example, in a murder case, you might have a defendant who might have been part of a larger group, maybe a conspiracy, and maybe that defendant had committed not only one murder, but was suspected of multiple murders or other crimes of violence that perhaps did not result in murder, perhaps some narcotics crimes, perhaps some firearms offenses. And you had to make the decision, do I just bring the murder charge, focus like a laser beam, present a simpler case to the jury, or do I try to pull in a whole bunch of other crimes, potentially a whole bunch of other defendants, into one prosecution and present the whole ball of wax? A much bigger endeavor, more complex endeavor, more challenging endeavor. That, it looks like, is one of the decisions District Attorney Willis has to make. Perhaps she's already made it. So when you bring that standalone case, that one charge or just one marquee charge case, what happens? Well, first of all, the defense attorney or the defense team will focus like a laser beam on that one charge, trying to do everything to knock it down. That's the job of a defense attorney, is to zealously represent their client and try to defeat the government's case, try to undermine the evidence, try to persuade the jury that the prosecutors have not proved guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, and they will focus like a laser beam on that one charge. And when you bring a standalone case, one charge case, the jury is deprived of context. They don't know anything more about what the defendant might have been doing as part of a criminal group, as part of a conspiracy, what other crimes the defendant may have been involved in. They just know about that one little isolated sliver of a crime that the prosecutors are trying to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. But if you can properly bring a larger case, a big conspiracy case, a RICO case against an organization or an enterprise that involves or that engages in a series of criminal offenses, what we call a pattern of racketeering activities. If you can do that, now you can't overreach, you have to have the evidence to do it. If you can do that, you give the jury the power of context. They can learn appropriately based on the evidence that this wasn't just one person doing this one thing in isolation and perhaps as an aberration. This is a pattern. This is part of a crew, of a conspiracy, of an enterprise, of an organization that is involved in committing crimes as a corrupt organization. That sure looks like what Donald Trump and his criminal associates, his co-conspirators, were involved in. Not just committing one crime, soliciting election fraud, give me 11,780 votes, Secretary of State Raffensperger, and corruptly declare me the winner. Yes, that was one crime, but boy, it was one in a series of crimes, a pattern of criminal activity that was operating on lots of fronts. And so if you can bring it all together and give the jury the power of context, a full appreciation of the criminal conduct of Donald Trump and his criminal associates, I happen to believe, in my experience, having tried more than 50 standalone murder cases and multiple big RICO cases and other conspiracy cases that weren't necessarily RICO cases, they were smaller, more modest, didn't involve a whole criminal organization or enterprise, maybe just 2, 3, 4, 5 co-conspirators. I've seen how both of those prosecutions play out, and what I will tell you, almost every time we had a far greater likelihood of success, and indeed a far greater rate of success, when we brought the bigger, more complex, more involved case, because it gave the jury the power of context. So it may be that a more streamlined, more narrowly focused, simpler case is the way to go. Maybe that has a greater likelihood of success in holding Donald Trump accountable for at least some sliver of his criminal activity, but I'm not so sure. I tend to believe the larger, more complex, more involved case, perhaps involving multiple charges, multiple defendants, and the use of Georgia state RICO laws is the better way to go. And in fact, the authors of the article note later on about how Fani Willis has used the Georgia RICO laws in the past. Here's how that passage reads. Miss Willis has a proven propensity for bringing and winning RICO cases. As we have learned in our criminal trial work, sometimes juries are more responsive to grander narratives that command their attention and outrage, and give the juries the power of context. So I couldn't agree more. It feels to me like the larger, more involved, perhaps RICO prosecution is the way to go, and District Attorney Fani Willis has a proven track record of success in bringing and winning RICO cases. So friends, let me take on just one other assertion in the New York Times piece, and we'll finish with this. The authors say, we must all prepare ourselves for what could be years of drama, with the pretrial, trial, and appeal likely dominating the coming election season. Oh, we're prepared. We're battle-tested. We survived the Trump presidency. We survived 4 years of a corrupt, criminal presidential cabal. Oh, we're prepared. Bring it on. Because justice matters. Friends, as always, please stay safe, please stay tuned, and I look forward to talking with you all again soon.